You have the right to remain silent, but we'd prefer if you didn't.
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
This is Malzberg's
Spinning the law.
Spinning the Law.
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
With attorney Kendall Coffey.
There we go. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. I like the way on the screen they got Kendall Coffey's autograph being written as they play the music. It's very sophisticated here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And joining us on this Friday edition for Spinning the Law is the one and only Kendall Coffey. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
Are you kidding me? Thanks for having you back. Thank you for coming back. Now, Elian Gonzalez, in your fine book, Spinning the Law, which talks about so many of the high-profile things you've been involved in, and talk about Elian Gonzalez, because he's in the news and he had some things to say, but talk about what your involvement was.
Well, I actually, at some point later on in the case, became one of the lead lawyers and argued the federal appeal and argued a number of the issues, was very, very involved in the case, and we represented Elian and his U.S. relatives and literally did battle against two governments at the same time, the government of Fidel Castro and
Janet Reno.
The government of the United States, and Clinton and Reno, who were aligned, at least on this one, with the Castro government.
And Elian Gonzalez is in the news. He said that his time in, that was back in 99 and 2000, by the way, and he said that they were very sad times for me, which marked me for my whole life. I was never given the chance to have a moment to think about my mother, who, as a result of that Cuban Adjustment Act, died at sea. He's now 19 years old, and he was 5 years old when it all happened. He said he suffered the consequences of that law. He said they also violated my basic rights gathered in the UN Convention of Rights of the Child, the right to be together with my father, the right to keep my nationality and to remain in my cultural context. He sounds like a good indoctrinated young Cuban man.
Well, let me tell you, he was very happy to be in the United States when he was here. He said he wanted to stay. Of course, he wanted his father to be with him.
Right.
But he was very happy to be here at the time. We predicted at the time that he would become a trophy of the Castro regime.
I remember you said that, yep.
He would be indoctrinated, and he would be fed a script to say whatever the regime wanted him to say. You and your listeners can decide whether that dire prediction has come to pass. But with respect to his mother, which is someone that we all felt very strongly about, she did sacrifice her life to bring her son to a life of freedom.
Right, to get him out of Cuba.
And many have lost their lives to come here, and it's a reminder, Steve, of how incredibly lucky we are to live in this country. Because believe me, 90% of the rest of the world would give most anything to be here, where you and I walk and breathe and enjoy life every day.
Yeah, and so you're not surprised at all by the remarks and the comments made publicly by Gonzalez at this point.
It's what, sadly enough, we had predicted from the beginning.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's talk about our Supreme Court, who earlier in the week on a 5-4 vote, it was Tuesday, I believe, decided to leave in effect a provision requiring doctors who perform abortions in clinics to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. We had talked about this as one of the unusual provisions or tough provisions in the Texas abortion or anti-abortion, as some would call it, law. And by that 5-4 vote, the court upheld that for now. So what does that tell you about the court, about this issue going forward, possibly?
Well, we also talked about how the anti-abortion strategies with respect to the judicial development have been very thoughtful. Planning, looking down the road, counting votes in terms of the Supreme Court, and not simply saying Roe versus Wade is a terrible decision, please overrule it, but looking for specific strategic points to advance their cause. 5-4, it sounds like a close vote, but it could be momentous. Normally, when a court says 5-4, we're going to leave the law in place on something like this, it suggests to me that 5 justices may be prepared to uphold the Texas law on this, significant issue. And if that's the case, this ruling, which which may have looked procedural, although it obviously affected many in Texas, this ruling could be of dramatic importance.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and it's going to be very interesting and exciting for those in the pro-life movement to see, to what extent the court is willing to go along and down this road. Let's talk a little bit about also something involving Eric Holder, and of course Eric Holder, he wanted to appeal a contempt verdict, or he was cited for contempt by the House of Representatives, looking for subpoenas and documents related to Fast and Furious. And because he was not forthcoming, according to the Congress, they voted to hold him in contempt. And a judge has refused Holder's request to be allowed to appeal the process.
The committee, yeah, exactly. The Committee on Oversight and Government Reform in the House of Representatives literally brought a lawsuit against Eric Holder to enforce its subpoenas for documents, which were, of course, opposed by the Department of Justice. Holder and DOJ moved to dismiss. That motion was denied, and then they said, look, this case is, one, very significant. Two, we think we have a good probability of winning this issue on appeal, asking the court to allow them. It's a specific federal. That request was denied, which means that there will be no appeal for now, and that Holder and DOJ are going to have to respond to the lawsuit. And there's going to be some very, very interesting issues and potentially some access to documents in the coming months.
Now, the judge noted that while she was turning down his request for the appeal, she is yet to rule on whether the documents have been improperly withheld from the committee under a claim of executive privilege. And if she makes such a finding, from what I understand, an appeal would be open at the conclusion of the case. So in other words, if she interjects herself into this further, then that opens the door for an appeal on the documents or on the subpoena itself. I mean, I'm a little confused.
Well, actually, you described it very well. You may be able to do this segment without me, Steve. But the issue really is just as you said. She has not ruled on which documents have to be turned over. She simply said that Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States, is subject to a lawsuit in federal court over this issue. If, as and when the lawsuit or parts of it are decided, for example, if there's an issue of contempt, then there could be, with respect to the documents that are ordered turned over, there could be some appellate rights down the line. But between now and then, there could be a lot of fascinating developments, Steve.
All right, let's touch on George Zimmerman, and we're actually going to speak to Mark O'Mara a little bit later in the show, his former attorney. And we're talking to Kendall Coffey here on our segment Spinning the Law on the Steve Malzberg Show. Zimmerman can't stay out of trouble. Nonetheless, the media, who was outraged that he was acquitted, they're kind of using everything. Interviews on Katie Couric by his estranged wife, who's going through a divorce. Every one of these episodes, even though there are two sides to every story, and if you want to give the benefit of the doubt to Zimmerman, you certainly can. We had one instance where he was his ex-wife had called police and claimed that he had beaten up her father and pointed a gun at her, and then she recanted basically and said, "I never saw the gun," and the father wasn't injured. So we don't know yet what happened here. But I actually heard the question asked on CNN by an anchor or a host to a legal expert: does this change, legally speaking, the verdict or in any way, shape, or form the case that was adjudicated in Florida? And that's the stupidest question I ever heard from anybody who's supposed to know that. I mean, Zimmerman could come out and confess, as O.J. could have confessed, and they couldn't be retried on the case they were acquitted of, correct?
Well, of course, that case is over. And of course, and there may be speculation. Well, don't these domestic incidents, which seem to involve allegations of anger, and in one case, the second one, perhaps actually the alleged display of a firearm, does it prove that George Zimmerman was a bad guy all along? And I would say, not in our system. That case is over. He was acquitted. Whatever one thinks of the verdict last summer, our system has to respect the jury process. As to this issues, he's a controversial guy, but what about a presumption of innocence? Why don't we let the process play out? And if in fact he's guilty, his attorneys, whoever's representing him now, they're not going to be crazy. They may seek a resolution with the prosecutors, but one way or another, we should know enough by now to know that the details aren't crystallized, the facts have not come out yet. Let's let this play out before we reach any conclusions at this point.
All right, we got one more for you, and this is out of Columbus, Ohio. The Supreme Court of Ohio said that a school district was legally justified in firing a science teacher who refused orders to remove classroom displays of religious materials. There were 3 justices dissenting. The Supreme Court ruling that the Mount Vernon district had grounds to fire John Freshwater for insubordination for keeping religious books and a poster of a president praying. They say that this district infringed on his First Amendment rights by ordering the removal of his personal Bible, but found he was insubordinate for keeping the other items. This makes sense?
Well, if you look at current law, it may make some sense. Remember, the justice of a state Supreme Court who basically lost his job because he had the 10 Commandments on the courthouse wall. So under the current law, this probably is an accurate picture of what the Supreme Court has done to now, protecting his right to have a personal Bible there, but saying that if you are ordered by your superiors to take down other religious displays, you disobey that, you run the risk of being insubordinate at your peril. I think that's accurately describing the law of today, Steve. But stay tuned. There could be some developments in the coming years.
All right, my friend. Listen, have yourself a great Thanksgiving, and we will reconvene, to use your language, in 2 weeks, God willing. And thank you really for all you do for us and for being there with your busy schedule. I really do appreciate your perspective and your friendship.
Hey, thank you, Steve, for everything.
All right, speak to you soon. Kendall Coffey, ladies and gentlemen, founding member of Coffey Burlington and author of Spinning the Law, and the featured guest on the Spinning the Law segment with Kendall Coffey, which usually takes place on Thursdays at the midway point of our show. But this week we did it on Friday. Why? Because we can. That's why. Don't take me to task. They love when I say take me to task. All right, when we come back, we are going to be joined by Daniel Hannan, British journalist and member of the EU Parliament. That's right. Can't wait for that. And we're going to talk about inventing freedom, how the English-speaking peoples made the modern world. Also, I'm sure he'll have something to say about Harry Reid and the Democrats changing and breaking the rules of the Senate yesterday and breaking with over 100 years of Senate tradition and making a mockery of the U.S. Senate right now in order to push through anything Barack Obama wants pushed through. Thank God we have the House, but the House can't intervene on judges, and that's going to be a big problem for this country for decades to come. But we'll talk to Daniel next hour. Noel Shepard, Dan Bongino, former presidential Secret Service agent, will be here live in studio, and so much more. Quanell X will be here later. That's right, new Black Panther Party to talk about this knockout nonsense. All on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio. Don't go away.